guys, thank you for tuning into Wednesday Night Reviews. I'm your host Konrad, and I'm here at my comic book shop that I like the most, Sketchbook Comics in St.Catharines, with Geoff, the owner and operator. Just wanted to do a quick little interview with Geoff, and so we can tell you about the comic book store.
Sure.
So Geoff, thank you for interviewing with us.
No worries.
So first and foremost, where did you start with comics?
It's an interesting question because I don't really remember life without comics. I always kind of, first and foremost, contributed to the Batman TV show, the 66 TV show. Not that I'm that old, but it was in reruns and stuff. I remember watching it in the afternoons and things. And I've got a giant book of old Batman comics from, I think it's called Batman from the 30s to the 70s. Not even printed by DC, like another publishing company printed this compilation. That somebody, I believe I got it for Christmas from my parents, but again, I was probably 5 or 6, so I don't, it's vague.
Yeah.
And I had a hardcover Spider-Man annual, I want to say from 1979, that I got, I believe, for Christmas as well. So again, comics have always been there. So I just, again, the TV show is kind of what I contributed to. Is I probably watched that enough that my parents thought he really likes Batman and Robin, and they weren't wrong. I mean, that's kind of where I contribute my lifelong love of the Robin character and Dick Grayson and stuff.
From Burt Ward.
Yeah, from that TV show, which I honestly can't watch anymore. Like, it bugs me. But I think that's where it all started. But again, I was so young, it's really tough to say. But they've always been there. Like, I still have that hardcover, that Batman hardcover. And I don't believe I have I might have parts of the Spider-Man annual, I should say that. Because I know the binding had broken apart in, you know, with some hardcovers, you get the pages that come out, stuff like that. Because I remember there was a Fred Hembeck double page spread of like a carnival with all the Marvel characters at the carnival, and like the parody characters for DC, like Superman was in it, and the original Captain Marvel, who's now Shazam, he's in it. You know, it was this crazy thing that is now, I looked it up, it's in the trade paperback that they just released for I think it's called Not Brand Ek, which was like their 1970s weird comedy book. Very weird, with like Forbush Man, the guy with the red suit. He had a big outfit and he wore like a pot on his head upside down. I don't know what it was back then, but like Forbush Man had a pot on his head, and the original Red Tornado, who was an old lady in JSA, had a pot that she wore on her head too. It was the weirdest thing in comics. But yeah, that's kind of what I contributed to, but they've always been there. I've never not read comics.
Awesome. And when it comes to the 66 Batman show with Adam West and Burt Ward, what is it about that now that you find you can't watch it?
Just the campiness of it all. You know, the goofiness of it. I appreciate it for what it is, and it absolutely plays a role in my love of Batman and Robin, but it's not.
It's a little too...
It just doesn't work for me anymore.
Okay, cool.
It's not what I want to read when I read Batman.
As you said, you always had comics in your life. When do you remember actively going to a comic book store like your own store here and collecting issue by issue? Or were you more of a graphic novels at first? No. I always wanted the floppies, always. Now I tend to gear more towards the hardcovers, but originally I always wanted the floppies because I used to buy them on the newsstand and stuff like that. Like, I remember buying like the G.I. Joes where they finally told Snake Eye's origin and stuff like that. And it's the first time I can remember making a point of trying to be there. Like, I would go every week because I really didn't, at the time I was probably 12 or 13. And I didn't get the monthly schedule. And I didn't know how that worked with a convenience store as opposed to an actual shop either. So I would go literally every week to see if the next part had come out, because I was, when you're buying on the newsstand, there's a good chance you're going to miss issues. Just the way it works so often. But I think I was probably 14 or 15 the first time that I really discovered a comic shop.
and I use that term loosely because it was really a used bookstore that also sold comics. It was called Mike's Bookstore. It was in Niagara Falls, and it was there for only a year or so.
As we were saying, we were talking about local comic shops, your local comic shop.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was a second-hand bookshop. They sold comics as well. It was called Mike's Bookstore. That was for about a year, and then there was another store. It was called Memory Lane, and they were actually pretty big in this area. They had a store in Niagara Falls. Their main one was on St. Paul, pretty much right across the street from where Len's Odds and Ends was, which was a comic shop down there.
Oh, okay.
The same one that's still there. It just has a different name now.
Oh, mostly. Is it the one that's currently mostly comics?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it is where the that pool hall is, the church, that sort of area, right?
About 3 doors further up St. Paul, away from Five Corners.
Okay.
Yeah, just that general building, but just down a couple of doors.
Okay.
And then they also had one in Welland. In like a really seedy part of Welland.
Oh.
Like it was right across the street from, almost right across the street from a terrible part of town. Like there was an old strip joint there, and I remember the only other thing in the area was a waterbed store for years. But yeah, right at the corner of East Main and Niagara.
Okay,
like
cool.
Right in that area.
And
I went to him for years.
Okay. And that was the used bookstore that also had comics?
No, that was Memory Lane was just comics.
Oh, okay,
comics,
so that was
and
real...
a little bit of other stuff, but at the time it was mostly comics and then the occasional trade paperback that got put out. But he didn't do a lot in the way of like action figures, but I'll be honest, I don't think it was an option for him at the time.
So it was basically the books or nothing?
It was comics, and that's where I would go. I'd ride my bike down there all the time, and it would probably take me half an hour to ride my bike, maybe longer, 45 minutes. It was like the other side of town.
Okay, cool.
But I still did it, didn't care. I'd take the bus down, and
Had to get the comics.
Yeah, it's a motorcycle place now. I think it's called Eagle's Nest Motorcycles or something in Niagara Falls.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, that's where I went for years and years and years, and then I just kind of changed shops periodically as things opened and closed, and you know how the business tends to work. But
and then ultimately, I suppose you get your own comics here.
Well, when I was, I guess I was probably in my early 20s. I worked for a comic shop that was only there maybe a year. They did comics and sports cards, and they were super ambitious, but the guy that ran the shop was a super nice guy, but had no real idea how to run a business. And his business partner, who was a lady who made, she was responsible for designing or building in some capacity, like retirement homes and stuff. And so they clashed a lot. It was a bad relationship to begin with. They weren't going to survive as partners. So they were there for about a year. But shortly after that, I want to say around 2004, I was working for a store called Gametronics that was a game shop. And then he wanted to bring comics in, and he started off in Niagara Square. He had a little corner of an arcade in Niagara Square that we sold video games. And then we opened up in the Penn Center, and we did comics in there. And our store was approximately where the frozen food section is in Zehrs now.
Oh, okay. And when was this?
That would have been around 2004 to about 2008 that we were there. But we were only there for about 2 years. And we also had a shop in Niagara Falls in Niagara Square.
Okay.
But then we actually moved to a brand new location that was built. We were the first tenants there. And that's right across the street from where I am right now.
So right in the plaza over there with the
it's the pharmacy and the walk-in clinic. That was us, that whole area.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And we did video games, we did comic books. And again, the action figures we did a little bit when we could, but it wasn't like today where the action figures are available through Diamond and stuff. In fact, we didn't go through Diamond back then. It was through a company called Multibook.
Okay.
And we also did we did Magic, we did video games, we did comics, and we did a little bit of board gaming and stuff.
Okay, and for those of you who aren't aware, Diamond is the main distributor for comic books, graphic novels. I mean, they kind of have the monopoly.
Yeah, it's effective. It's not a monopoly, but it's very much a monopoly.
Yeah, like yeah. I imagine at your store you probably go through them, correct?
You can't. Well, we could go through a third party who gets them from Diamond. In the end, it's all coming from Diamond.
Yeah.
They say it's not a monopoly because there are comic book publishers, and I shouldn't even say that. There are comic book publishers that don't use Diamond, but more importantly, there are magazine publishers that do not use Diamond, and that's where they get away with everything. They have Marvel, they have DC exclusively, they have, I'm pretty sure Dark Horse and Image are exclusive with them, but because comics are considered periodicals, everything else is taken into account. So Sports Illustrated and New Time and Newsweek and newspapers, all of that. And because those aren't all only through Diamond, it's not a monopoly. There are other distributors for that stuff. But
yeah, like those.
If you're a comic shop, you have to have Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going through Diamond.
Yeah, you have to go through Diamond.
Okay, and when you were over there, when was the end time for that location?
I think it was around 2008, and the three partners just decided they didn't want to do it anymore.
So they were done? Okay.
Yep, they just up and shut her down.
And to my memory, I believe your store now is celebrating its 4th year?
You would be incorrect. September 8th was 7.
7 years. Okay, so did you go from there to here?
No. We were there till, I want to say about 1998, I think is when they closed. And then I did other stuff. I worked briefly at Toys R Us, and I worked at Dufferin Games in the Penn Center, which was like a board game, and like they sold board games, puzzles, little toy trinkets and like puzzle trinkets and stuff. But they also sold like pool tables and pool cues and foosball and air hockey
sort of
and
gaming of some
all very much leisure stuff. And it was cool working there. I actually ended up managing the store for the last year that we were there, but I was kind of put in place as the manager, so they didn't have to hire a new one before they closed it. And then the entire chain went out of business within a couple of years of that. But and then I worked for a factory making hot tubs for about a year, and then I was working at a company called Accenture. It's a call center, but I did pretty much everything under the sun there. Took calls, trained, managed, worked on new projects, worked in the back office stuff, doing paperwork. You name it, I did it.
Basically.
And then when I left there, that was effectively when we got to this.
Okay, and when did this open? When did this become, your shop, Sketchbook Comics, become an idea?
When my business partner Joel and I were both working at Accenture. We've known each other since the days of Gametronics. Okay. But when we were both working at Accenture, we talk about it. And in fact, it was in my office when I was a manager at Accenture that we registered, I guess is the right word, registered the business name.
Okay. Yeah. And then from there, how long from like registration to
we're talking day? I think it was probably about, because we didn't go into it full force at that point. You know, we did the whole kind of sit back and try and figure out what we wanted to do, like we've got the name, type of thing.
Yeah.
Well, we had the business name. We still had to figure out a name for the store. That didn't take too long. But
what's the difference?
Well, when you register the name of the business, it doesn't have to be the name of your store. It can't, like, I'm pretty sure the business's official name is Joel's name and my name.
Okay.
But then when you open the store, that's when you'll have to have the name. Because the official paperwork, it's all just our names, with Sketchbook listed underneath it.
Okay.
But, and our numbers, and it's all government stuff.
Basically, it's contact information. Who are you? And then the name you put up front is just kind of meh.
Yeah, in a way, it kind of is. Like, if we'd had it at the time, we probably would have registered it as that, but we didn't. So it's just our names. But I think it probably took us about 2 years. It's blurry because it's been a blur of 7 years.
A good blur, I hope?
Yeah, fantastic blur,
Awesome.
Just a blur. It really doesn't feel like 7 years, that's why. It's one of those situations where I'm like, it feels like it's been maybe 3-4 years.
Awesome.
Like I was looking at a picture that popped up on Facebook for me, and it was from 2012. And it was some sort of magic event, so it's a couple of tables sitting here, and all the kids were playing. The one kid that was sitting at the table, I'm like, wow, he's at college right now.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, I'm like, we've literally had almost a generation of kids that have come through here as Magic players and still come back when they're back for Magic or from college and stuff, but they're away at university, they're away at college, whatever it is.
That must be a really crazy experience.
It is, and I still yell his name every time I see him. Doesn't matter where. He used to work at McDonald's on on Welland, and I'd walk in if he was there. I'd yell his name, and all the workers would be like, yeah, I used to do that to him all the time.
That's hilarious. And how many people basically in the sketchbook community do you have like that? Like, if you see someone, can you go, oh, I know that guy?
Oh yeah, it's a little bit weird for me because I knew so many people from Gametronics across the street. Then I knew so many people from Dufferin Games at the Penn Center, and now even a little bit at Accenture because it's such a huge company that I knew a lot of faces from it. That isn't quite the same, and now from here. So there are times people will say something to me and I'm literally thinking, I don't know where I know you from, but I'm just gonna fake it. And I do. I just talk to them like I do know them. My girlfriend all the time is like, who is that? I'm like, I don't know. Do you know them from the store? Maybe.
But you're sure you know them, you just can't remember where.
Yeah, it's just, I know them from where. But it's usually a face where I'm looking at them going, most of the people from the store I know it's from here. But you get those people that are kind of semi-regular. Or those people that I'm like, I know that face, but I haven't seen it in a long time, so it must be a Dufferin or a Gametronics thing where I know them from. But what's really weird is every once in a while somebody will bring me a collection, and I'll pull stuff out, and it'll have price tags on it from Gametronics.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I'm like, there's a blast from the past.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I always take pictures of it and send it to my old boss from Gametronics. I'm like, remember this? Because he and I are still friends. But
oh, good for you. It's really good to hear.
Yeah, it was great.
So for opening day for your shop, what went into that? Was it kind of just a hurry to get it done, or was it like a big event?
It wasn't a big event. We just kind of were like, let's just open now. We'd already been here we were closing in on 2 months that we were in here renovating and stuff, because it was a barbershop, hair salon before. Like we had to take sinks out and piping out and everything.
Whoa.
Yeah, like our main wall there, we didn't even know there was slat wall on it because it was all sinks. And we were getting ready to go out and buy the slat wall when I tore down the wall, and with 100% with just the intention of taking the piping out.
Yeah.
And as we tore the wall down and started pulling the piping out, we realized it was all slat wall behind it. Awesome. So it was already there. But yeah, it was also one of the grossest experiences of my life, because what we found as we tore up the floor was that they would use the air blowers to blow the cut hair off of you.
Yeah.
But what that does is it slowly over time pushes hair under the floorboards. So we would tear up all the it wasn't hardwood, it was like the vinyl flooring,
yeah.
like that. Looks like wood flooring.
Yeah.
So as we would tear that up, there was the plastic sheets underneath it, which is what's supposed to be under there. But when we would pull the sheets up, it sounded like rain.
Oh.
And it was all of the hair just sliding down it. We would go home with, like, from sweating, we'd be caked in what I can only imagine was thousands of previous customers' hair. Yeah, it was quite the experience. It was gross. But we eventually got it all out.
I imagine that was a lot of vacuuming and brooming.
I remember we would just take we would just haul the sheets right out the back door into the back and throw it in dumpsters. But yeah, there was a lot of vacuuming, a lot of sweeping. We went through a couple of shop vacs over the course.
As in, like, they broke down?
Yeah.
Wow.
We would borrow them from people. People were like, oh, I got a shop vac you can use, and then we'd be like, here's a new one, because we broke it. But yeah.
Very nice of you to replace it.
Well,
that's a little scary.
They were usually family. So.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Has that sort of led to why the floors here are concrete?
Yeah.
You just don't want to,
we were going to put new flooring in, but honestly, it's so expensive. And it took so long to get rid of all the flooring, because it was like the vinyl flooring and the plastic sheets and foam sheets, and then in some areas of the store there was a mismatched tile, like the tile and I don't remember where it was, but the tile over there would be matching up, like butting up with another form of tile, none of which looked the same. And so it was like, okay, this has got to go. So yeah, we tore up
so much,
all kinds of tile. Like it took us ages to get rid of that, because there was so much of it. It was so heavy.
Oh.
Yeah.
And when it comes to actually getting things open, so you rip up the floors, you rip up the walls. Did you repaint everything?
We tore down walls because there used to be, from the edge of that slat wall where the sensor is, there was a wall that came out, and then it kind of went this way about where we are, and then went, I think, just the side of that that overhang there.
Okay.
So this was a separate room, because again, barbershop. But then they had like a photo studio at one point back here because you could see like the old lettering on the walls that had been painted over by somebody.
Okay.
And that room there, which is our storeroom, but was something else. So we tore all of those walls down and had to replaster stuff. And yeah, there was a lot.
Wow.
A lot of stuff that we had to do.
That is some crazy stuff.
Like I said, we had a lot of fun, like bombing an old sink into a dumpster. It just explodes. I'm like, look at that, that's awesome.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
Like even our ceiling tiles, like we're missing a couple from a leak a couple of years ago, but yeah, we had to get new tiles and stuff because so many of them were destroyed. And yeah, it was a process, but
it gets done.
Yeah, it took some time, but yeah, it was just me and my business partner. His wife did a lot of work with us too, but yeah, just a lot of wrecking things and painting. And we had a couple of different friends who came in and helped us do it at different times. And
that's really cool.
Yeah.
And for opening day, was there, like, did you guys put ads out? Did you tweet or what was sort of the...
Not for opening day, we didn't. We did like a grand opening later. I don't even remember it, to be honest. I remember most of it we did on Facebook and stuff. I think we also did something in, and I could be wrong, it might have come later. I think we did something in Snap, that newsletter. It looks like a newspaper that goes out.
The Brock one, yeah.
No.
I know
you might have got it at Brock, but yeah, it's everywhere. And Niagara this week, we were in Niagara this week multiple times. Yeah, I think Snapped was part of it, but we did the grand opening a couple of weeks later, maybe beginning of October. I don't really remember. It wasn't a huge deal at the time, but
cool. And what has been, like you said, you're on 7 years now, 7 years in a week.
Yeah.
What has been some like the major changes that you've seen in your shop here?
We went from like our comic racks where the games used to be over there. Our comic racks were literally, I think they were 8-foot sheets of wood that we had attached shelves to the front, so that they effectively did what our metal racks do, but they were wood and they just didn't look as good. So eventually we bought all the metal racking and mounted it on the walls and everything, and it just looks better. But working within budgets of what you're kicking off with. Yeah, we had wooden shelving. We had behind the counter where we have the metal cabinets now, we had just like cupboards, like kitchen cupboards from IKEA that we had across the back wall that we use for storage and stuff. I don't remember now.
It's been that long.
The side room has been changed countless times. At one point, all of our storage was in the back hall, but it's a narrow back hall. Most people don't even realize that it's back there. But it's very narrow, so at one point we used the side room for more Magic players.
Oh, okay. How big is that side room?
Not big enough.
Not big. Okay.
We would usually put in, I want to say we would have 2 tables in there, but it wasn't big enough for 2 tables, so it was cramped in there. So at one point we broke it down to 1 table, and then it was like, what are we even doing this for? So we changed it so that was storage, and then we had like the 2 tables here, and we had that part was product and stuff for years.
I remember that, yeah.
So we had 2 tables here and 2 tables here, and then we would drop another one there, and then we would put one right at the very front of the store. So that was 6, 12, 24. That we were fitting more tables in somewhere. I don't remember where. Might have been right here. We had got it to the point where with our fold-out table, like with our regular tables, and then we had a couple of these little tables we had bought at IKEA that we were using almost like desks.
Okay.
At one point. that we would set up in every little areas, because you could only put 2 people at them, and even they were too small. So we could fit 50 players in, which was way too many for the store.
That's a
because if
lot
you
of
came here for
people.
anything that wasn't to sit down and play Magic, it was way too cramped.
Wow.
So we don't even go to that level anymore. It's like, no.
Just because you can't handle it.
Yeah, we do too much in the way of comics and stuff now that it's not worth it. I don't want to put our comic customers out by
For sure.
by blocking off the front of the store, which is effectively what we were doing.
Okay.
But we did that for, I want to say, maybe the first year, and then we were like, yeah, no more of this.
And like I said, you don't want to block your comic customers
Right.
out. When it comes to Sketchbook Comics, because I mean, comics is in the name, but you clearly, I mean, you've got horror action figures and horror books,
Yep.
Collectibles, the pop figures, Magic cards, everything, like everything
Yep.
under the sun you guys have here.
D&D and board
Yeah,
games. And,
exactly. Where do you find, is there a general balance that you try and keep when you're ordering, or is it just sort of, it comes as it comes and your customers
it's
will
kind
let
of
you
it
know?
comes as it comes. It varies. I mean, comics are definitely our biggest, hands down. It used to be pretty 50-50 between Magic and comics, but comics have grown for us steadily, and Magic is a little more
Like even still?
kind of even.
So like comics is sorta-
there are times it goes up, and then there are times it goes down. Just as players, like I said, go away to college or university, or get out of the game because they discovered girls or they discovered boys, and yeah. So Magic kind of goes that way, whereas comics has grown a lot, is more steady for us. That's not to say we don't do a ton of Magic. We still definitely do, and the horror stuff it's a little newer for us. Like, we've really focused on it probably the last year and a half, 2 years. So now we do the Niagara Falls Comic Con every year, which is always a great show for us. But we're also doing the Frightmare in the Falls show that they do in October.
Oh.
And it's a much smaller show, but it's a great show for us. Like, it's a neat show to be at too. Like like you and I both done the big cons and the
God,
smaller
yeah.
cons, and one of the neat things about the horror con over a Comic Con is everybody's there because they're into the same thing.
Oh, so it's a singular focus.
Yeah,
thing.
like it's all horror. That being said, they bring in guests they bring in wrestlers for some reason. I guess it works really well in the States.
Oh, okay.
And it's worked well for them I believe it was last year they had Bret Hart there, and
Oh, that's pretty
he
cool.
did great. But the reality of it is that the majority of people are there for the exact same thing. Whereas that's not really the case with comic shows anymore,
Yeah, you get a little bit of this and that.
Some people are there for comics, and some people are there for pop figures, and some people are there for the celebrities, and some people are there for cosplay. So whereas at the Horror Con, it's this unified group of people that are all into the same thing. Or at least, 85, 90% of them are. And it's a neat thing to kind of watch. Like, every single person is into the same thing. I'm like, that's odd.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Now, as you mentioned, you've gone to, I believe at least once you've done Fan Expo. You've gone to...
Oh, I've done Fan Expo a number of times.
Okay.
Yeah, I would guess into double digits.
Wow.
That I've gone to Fan Expo.
As you or as the store?
No, I've never gone as a store. It's too expensive for us as a store to compete. And I mean, you can tell the difference now going to Fan Expo compared to what it was even 4 or 5 years ago.
Absolutely.
When it comes to the amount of vendors. That number has gone down greatly. So much of that floor space now is filled with video game displays, and
Yeah.
EB is a monster presence there, which blows my mind. That why would you pay to get into a con to shop at EB? Go to their store.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's a very different experience than it used to be, where it was, I don't know, 70% comics and then toys and some video games and stuff, but not
No,
anymore. The vendors have really dropped in numbers.
Okay, and I mean, I'm willing to bet that you've been there longer than I have. I remember my first time going to Fan Expo would be, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 years ago. I remember when it was just in the South Building.
Yeah, I
sorry,
remember the
was
first
just in one
times.
building.
Yeah, the first times that I went, it was just in the North Building, because I remember and we still make jokes about this, despite the fact that I've since sold the book. But we got there, And before we even got into the show, I believe we'd already bought the tickets. And then I went into the bathroom, and as I'm using the restroom, there's a guy in there. He's like, "Are you guys looking to buy comics?" And I was like,
in the washroom.
Yeah. I'm like, "Well, it's a comic show, so yeah." And he's like, "I got this. Are you interested?" And it was the first appearance of Iron Fist. So I was like, "What did you want for that?" And he was like, $15. I was like, "Yeah, done." So I bought the first appearance of Iron Fist in a men's room in the Northern Convention Center in Toronto.
Why not, right? Like, hey, when
I sold it later here at the store.
Perfect.
Yeah. But yeah, we were in the North Building, and then I remember when they moved it to the South Building, because I've always, to this day, I still go in through the North Building.
Yeah.
And because I park near there. But I remember the first time going like, where are we going? And it's a long walk.
Yes.
Like, it's a little mind-blowing to realize it's effectively the same place. But you're walking for 15 minutes to get from the North Building to the South. And as we just kept going, it felt like we were sinking to the center of the earth as we took more and more escalators down. I was like, what is happening? And then we got down there. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Except back then, I remember Wi-Fi wasn't worth anything.
No.
It was terrible Wi-Fi, and it was extra bad down there, which honestly, it's only been good down there maybe the last couple of years.
Yeah, and
it was always terrible before.
And that's what, 2 or 3 floors down into the ground.
We gotta be well below ground level.
Yeah, because you go up at least 3 sets of escalators before you see the sunlight. So yeah, it's pretty crazy.
But the catch is when you hit that floor where you can go out, then you go downstairs to get back to the ground. So I think you're 2 or 3 floors below ground level though.
Probably.
Still. Yeah, it feels like way more, but yeah. But I did like Wizard World in Chicago when that show was big. I did that 10 times.
Wow.
I went in 99 and 2000 with a guy I used to know, and I loved it. And then I want to say it was 2002 through 2009-ish, something like that, that Joel and I went, and we road tripped it every year.
Awesome.
And we'd leave at 10, 11 o'clock at night and just drive straight through the night through Michigan and everything. And I loved it, loved the road trip. And then, it took us usually about 10 hours, 8 hours to 10 hours. And we would get there right about the time the show was opening.
Oh, that's perfect.
With stops and stuff. And so we wouldn't even sleep that first day. We'd literally check into the hotel and then head into the show. Because I got to the point where I think the last probably 6 or 7 years, we would stay in the hotel that was attached to the convention center, where all the celebrities hung out.
Oh, that's cool.
And where all I say celebrities, but I don't mean like the movie stars and stuff. They were there, but it was when I say celebrities, I'm referring to like the comic creators, like the artists and the writers and stuff. And that's where we met a bunch of our friends that are in the business. Like that's where I met Jeremy Hahn and B. Clay Moore. Like Jeremy Hahn, I mean, does the Beauty and the Realm right now at Image, and has done countless things, including work for the Bat Office at DC. And B. Clay Moore has done a bunch of stuff for DC, especially with like promotional stuff. But he's done all kinds of stuff that he's published through Image. Right now he's writing a book called The Killers for Valiant that ties into Ninjak, I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly. Yeah, it ties into, it's not Ninjak, but it ties into that whole, the Ninja A through K story that they've got going on. That's where I met Jason Latour, who later created Spider-Gwen.
That is so cool. And just because they're just chilling out in the hotel,
well, we met them on the floor, and we would come back and talk to them so often, and we just dug talking to them, and apparently they liked talking to us. And we went back the one year, and we happened to be standing there, and Han and Clay were just talking about what they were doing for dinner, and Han just kind of looked at us. He's like, why don't we bring them? So we went with them, and I think the next year we ended up with, Han had written a book that was published through Oni Press, and the artist and his wife were supposed to come to the show, and they ended up canceling. So he gave us their passes.
Oh, sweet.
So I was the artist and Joel was my wife. And but it allowed us to stay past opening. Like we could come in before open, but like we didn't have to stand in line for anything.
Wow.
And we could stay past close, and it didn't matter.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it was awesome.
When it comes to like Niagara Falls Comic Con, what makes that in your mind sort of, because from the way you're talking about it, more or less is around here anyway, your favorite? That it's just smaller, you can talk with people easier, or?
I think that plays a role in it. You're not standing in line for 4 hours for a celebrity. If you want a celebrity, you might still stand in line for an hour, maybe even 2, depending on who it is. But if they're there, might be the way for me to kind of qualify that. If the celebrity has arrived, you're probably not going to stand around for nearly as long as you are at Fan Expo. Like I know people that stood in line for 4 hours to meet people, and to me, I'm like, that's a waste of your day. Like that's easy half your day. And so, yeah. And as a shop owner, I have people that come see me at every show, and I can talk to them there and hold a conversation with them. And I get people that are asking me other questions from the same side, but we've also got enough people at the booth with us that hopefully that's not a big problem. But, you get a chance to talk to them and get to know them and have a fun time. And, like 2 years ago, and just so viewers know, our booth is always right across from the celebrities. Like between us and the celebrities, it's space for people to line up and walk past. On one hand, it's fantastic because we're near the celebrities. On the other hand, it's awful because it's so crowded sometimes near the celebrities that people use our booth as a walkthrough, which drives us nuts, but they do it anyway. But because of that, we tend to get a lot of celebrities that come through our booth. So 2 years ago, Jason Mewes was hanging out in our booth, talking to us and looking at stuff. And it made me laugh because he was like, can you do a deal on this? And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was, I want to say it was a Gorilla Grodd statue. And I just kind of looked at Joel, because Joel's a huge Jason Mewes fan. I was like, I'll leave this to you, man. Like,
go for it.
Talk to him. And he was like, and his response was, you better do it. I'm going to give it to him for free. And so I was like, all right, this is what we would do. And it turned out it wasn't what he's looking for anyway. He wanted more of an action figure than a statue. But, like last one in June, Oscar from The Office came by our booth, I want to say 3 times. My sister made friends with him over the course of the weekend. So he kept coming over to talk to her. And I can't think of what her name is. I want to say her first name is Karen, but she was the older sister, the older Banks sister on Hillary on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Oh, okay.
She's been through our booth, and I mean countless others. The guy who plays Jesus on Walking Dead was in our booth. I wasn't there at the time, but he was.
That's super cool.
Michael Rooker walked through our booth a couple of times. So it's just fun that way. Like you could turn around and boom, there's somebody right there. Having a conversation with you. I can't remember his name. He was in Breaking Bad.
Who did he play?
I haven't watched Breaking Bad. I remember he melted. He died by being melted. He was a bad guy. He always, he's a really thin man, black glasses.
Oh God!
His name is completely slipping my mind. He's been in. He was like many things. He was a big villain, I think.
Yeah, he run the chicken chain. It was like a front for.
I think so. Yeah.
He was like the main bad guy. Yeah.
He was a great guy. He and I was talking to him a bit when he was just leaving to go do lunch or something. I don't remember, but I happened to be standing there and we were talking just briefly, but the Daleks were driving around. And so we were talking about those, and he ended up driving one later that day.
Yo!
He's like, I want to drive one of those. I'm like, go ask.
Do it, yeah.
And they let him drive one around. So it's just fun that way, like it's, I don't know, like Fan Expo is so big and it's such a machine that for me, a lot of the fun has gone out of it. It's, like I know James and I know Chris who own Niagara Falls, and I talk to James all the time, and Niagara Falls is just a fun time.
Right.
So yeah, and I get to host panels at it and
that's
talk to all the comic guys that I've ever wanted to, and it's great. Like I hosted the they didn't need a host, like let's be honest here, they did not need a moderator, but it was George Perez and Jim Starlin and Joe Rubenstein who all did Infinity Gauntlet back in the 80s. And, you know, I did James O'Barr's a couple of years ago, who did The Crow. And
that's sick.
Like, you know, yeah, I love doing the panels. They're so much fun. Getting to meet these guys is amazing.
And I mean, when we do our tour, I'm going to make sure I get a shot of it, but you have a ton of, well, around the shop, you've got posters and drawings. But I particularly like, you've got little sticky notes with all
that's
sketches on it.
Yeah, that's one of the guys who comes in and helps us out from time to time, Noah. He's actually in school for something to do with graphics. I don't remember exactly what. But yeah, he just doodles us up when he's got nothing else to do. Yeah, the Hulk's riding the dinosaur, that's just a coloring page that my daughter did. But yeah, all this Post-it notes are just things that he doodles on all the time.
That is super cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I love Niagara Falls for that. It's a good time. It's just fun, you know.
Right on. And now, as a business, as mentioned, you've gone for 7 years. You find that your comics, has it been that your comics sales and the business of comics has just sort of been steady, or is it steadily growing?
For us, it's been a little of the steadily growing. The first couple of years was a little kind of like, there was growth, but it was a more gradual. But the last couple, it's jumped up a little higher. I know a lot of people who can attribute that to the Marvel movies. I don't know how much I believe that. Honestly, in 7 years, I can count on one hand the number of people who have come in and said, I just saw X movie and I want to read the comics. I've actually had far more that have watched, you know, Flash or Arrow or
the TV shows.
Not so much Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but yeah, like Flash, Arrow, Supergirl, who have seen that and want to get something, not necessarily something based on the show, but they want Flash or they want Green Arrow or something like that. They want that
character.
Yeah. I get it more from the TV than I do the movies.
Interesting.
It doesn't help that, you know, years ago when people would come in, they'd be like, I want to read the Avengers. And I'd be like, it's nothing like the movies, man. Like, it's not even the same characters right now. It is again now, but at the time it wasn't.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah. I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm sure it's cyclical, but...
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, it's been steadily growing for us. And I mean, part of it might just be, you know, we still, after 7 years, get people that go, I had no idea you were here. That's how often I come down here. You know,
oh, wow.
So, but, you know, sometimes we get a huge influx from Brock and Niagara, you know, come August, September.
Whatever, yeah.
And sometimes we get a moderate one from them, you know, so sometimes they're a big boost, sometimes they're not. But yeah, it keeps growing for us, so I'm good with it.
And what have you found has changed in comics over your time being, say, from year 2, so you've gotten like a good hang of the business, year 2 to now? What trends are different? What's selling? What isn't? What are the what books are good? What aren't? Well, in your opinion, of course.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, it's interesting, some of the stuff, like people talk about Deadpool all the time. And for the first few years, Deadpool was a huge seller for us. Like one of our top sellers. I think Batman has pretty consistently been our #1 seller since pretty much day one.
I mean, he's bad.
But Deadpool was definitely up there, and so was Harley Quinn. And people still talk about how much they love Deadpool and blah, 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 the movies and all that. His comic sales for us have tanked.
Really?
Like, we went from selling, and I'm just gonna make up numbers for comparison's sake, but if we were selling 40 copies a month of his book, it's maybe 5 now. Like, they lost a ton of readers for us for some reason.
Do you think that has something to do with the timing of the films, or is it totally...
No, I think it has more to do with kind of taking advantage of the readers. They knew they had an audience. And so there was a stretch a few years ago where Deadpool, I believe the stretch was like September through December, so about 4 months. And in that stretch, 3 of the books cost either $7.99 or $9.99 for the month.
Like a single 22-page issue?
Well, not always 22-page, but they would make giant issues. Like the one issue, they decided to do For whatever reason, they made it double-sized. And then the next month, they decided to do a crossover in it, but do the whole crossover within one issue. So there's like 3 issues in one.
Okay.
And then the next month was back to regular price. And then the next month, it was, boom, back up to like $7.99 or $9.99 again. I don't remember why. But I think doing that kind of told customers, by the way, we know you're here regardless, we're going to do whatever we want. We're going to charge you whatever we want. And I think it hurt them, because I think what ended up happening, and I say think, what I know happened for us, other stores may be very different, but for us, and what Marvel likes to do is end a series and then restart it.
They're constant number ones.
Yeah, so they're always putting out number ones. When they ended that Deadpool series and restarted, our readers didn't jump to the new series. And the interesting thing being, they didn't do that high price increase. Like, I think the first issue was $4.99, and then from that point on, it was the $3.99 US.
Which is the regular.
Yeah, which is normal price. But yeah, those readers, when that series ended, they all stepped off.
Weird.
It's like a train ride, and they were like, "This is our stop."
They kind of shocked the system with these weird price jumps,
and I think the customers just went, "Oh, that's it. I got them all. I'm out." Yeah.
Interesting.
And Harley, I think, and the other thing too with Deadpool, and both Harley and Deadpool suffer from this, is just massive overexposure. I mean, we've seen it.
Oh, okay.
It's a very much a normal thing in comics. You know, Wolverine's selling well, put him in every book. Find a way to fit him in everything. And we've seen them do it with Batman. Batman almost seems to be exempt from it. Like, you don't see people jump off, and Wolverine for years was exempt from it too. It took a long time before people got fed up with it. Deadpool and Harley, it didn't take nearly as long. And they were in everything. You know, Harley had 2 or 3 books coming out a month, be it her regular series and a couple of limited series, or her regular series and a couple of appearances in other books. There was always multiple things that she was in. And Deadpool, I think Deadpool at one point had 3 or 4 books a month on his own.
Wow.
And with crossovers and limited series, and his 2 regular books at one point. And I think people just got tired of it, and it dropped off. And yeah, even the second movie didn't really, again, just speaking for us, no influx from that second movie.
Sales or nothing?
No. And it's almost like people went, you know what I can do? I can just wait and buy the movie, and I can rewatch the movie as much as I want, and it'll cost me $20 and that's it. And I don't have to worry about Marvel spiking the prices on us.
Fair enough.
Other big changes over the years, when DC did their rebirth 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now. It doesn't seem that long, but it has been.
Well, no, because Batman's working on issue 80 real soon.
Yeah.
12 a year. No, but
they were doing 2 a month though, for a long time.
Doubling up. Yeah.
In fact, I think they still are. I think Batman's one of the few that's still 2 a month.
Wow.
Marvel's got a few that do 2 a month, but Batman, I think, is the only one left at DC that I can think of that is doing 2 a month. Maybe Justice League.
I don't think so. I think Justice League's 1 per month.
It seems to be coming out a lot right now.
That's true.
Maybe they jumped to bi-weekly for this. For the Heroes, Year of the Heroes, whatever, or Year of the Villain story that they're doing right now. But like 2.5 years ago, when they did Rebirth, there was this shift to the comics that really seemed to be DC's focus was now, we're just going to tell good stories, and that's it. All the variant covers went away. They said, we're going to do 2 covers on every book. Order what you want. That's it. They have brought back variant covers a little bit since Bendis came over, but still not to the same degree. Whereas Marvel, it could be issue 23 of Moon Knight, and they're like, we've got 8 covers for you. You know, it's nuts. Like issue 1 of Tony Stark Iron Man had 27 covers that were orderable through Diamond, so that didn't even include store exclusives. Yeah, it's crazy the number of variants they do. But the focus really seemed to shift to DC is just telling better stories than Marvel is. Marvel has, and it's kind of been this way for the last couple of years, and I make jokes about it because about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years ago, somebody said, well, why do you say, DC is better stories? I said, well, DC is putting out about 50 books a month
That's a lot
average.
of books.
You think it is. They're putting out about 50 books a month. And this was, I think it was May of 2017, might have been May of 2018. I said, and I can recommend, like, honestly recommend probably 35 of them.
That's a pretty good chunk.
I'm like, that's a huge ability. I was like, man, I love that I can do this. I'm like, Marvel in this same month put out 84 books. And I can recommend 4.
Wow.
That I honestly, I'm going to hand you and say, this is a great book. Thor was one of them. I'm blanking on what the rest were now.
Well, it's a year ago.
Yeah, we're going back a year or two. But Thor was definitely one of them. But yeah, and it just seemed like Marvel wasn't telling stories at the same level. Now that has changed a bit. I don't think their focus is on just telling stories like DC's still seems to be for the most part. But they've gotten better. Daredevil, while I don't read it, has been doing great. Everybody I talk to is like, since Chip Zdarsky came on this book, it's fantastic.
Well, that's why.
Although people loved it when Charles Soule was writing it before too. So
yes.
Don't get me wrong.
Charles Soule's good, but yeah, that's why I went to it. I was like,
Zdarsky, people are blown away by him. I love the Invaders book. Ironically, also written by Chip Zdarsky. The X-Men books right now are phenomenal. Like House of X and Power of 10 are just the 2 limited series that Hickman is using, Jonathan Hickman, the writer, is using to set up this new X-Men universe. And it's phenomenal. Yeah. It's insanely good. I strongly recommend that you all read it when the trade hits. And my understanding is they're putting both series in one trade because you have to read them together.
Yeah, because they alternate. It's like
it goes like
two,
House 1,
3,
Powers 1, House 2, Powers 2, Powers 3, House 3, House 4, Powers 4. Yeah, it's a weird numbering system, but
it clicks.
It tells you at the back of every issue what issue to read next. And so they're putting out some good stuff. I mean, Jason Aaron's still knocking it out of the park on Thor. You know, the X-Men books are great. Daredevil is great. Invaders is great. They're putting out some good stuff. At the same time, they're doing stuff that irritates me too. Spider-Gwen, I'm like, you changed her name to Ghost Spider? Why? Oh, because you brought her into the regular universe instead of leaving her in her alternate timeline, you know. But Marvel, you know, with the dozens and dozens of variant covers and I think they're upwards of 110 books a month now.
Holy
yeah, it's been a while since I counted, but I read an article not too long ago that said they were around 100, 105.
And do you get all 105 books each month, or is there some that you just won't pick up?
The majority. There are some that have proven not to sell for us.
So you just,
It pains me, but Black Panther doesn't sell for us. If I bring in 2 copies, I'll still have 2 copies. So I stopped bringing it in. It just doesn't make sense.
Now that being said, if someone walked in and said, "Hey, I want Black Panther," you'd order it, right?
Of course. Yeah, of course. If somebody sets up a pull list and they want a book that doesn't sell, absolutely, I'll bring it in for them. Ironheart was another one that didn't really sell for us. We bring it in, but we bring in like, again, 2 copies.
Minimum.
And we'll usually go through those. Not always, but usually. But, you know, whereas X-Men, I can't get enough of the book.
Because it's gone.
It's gone within minutes of me opening the store.
I mean, it's X-Men. It's one of the, if not the biggest, it's one of the biggest.
It's one of their biggest properties, but it hasn't been. That's the thing. You know, it's been, for me, it's been at least 25 years since that book was good. And now it's just phenomenal.
With Hickman, right?
Yeah. And I had a lot of reservations about Hickman because I hated his Avengers stuff.
Oh.
His Avengers stuff was what was happening when people would see the Avengers and say, "Hey, I want to read Avengers," and I'd go,
"It's not the same."
Yeah, this Avengers book is about Shang-Chi. I love Shang-Chi. You just watched Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor with Black Widow and Hawkeye. This isn't going to work for you.
Oh, it was a bit of a disconnect.
Yeah, okay. The character lineup was completely different at the time, and he was telling some giant story that if you weren't on from the beginning,
you couldn't click in.
You couldn't jump in. And so I had some reservations, and he clearly loves the X-Men.
Good.
And it's not about, you know, like when Morrison wrote it back in the 90s, he was like, I'm going to create all these mutants that aren't pretty, that are weird and wacky and like the brain in the floating ball and the globular guy whose name I have no idea what it is. Whereas this time Hickman was like, no, I don't want to create a whole bunch of new characters. He created a few, but more in the kind of the future timeline part of it. but his mentality was, there are hundreds of X-Men characters that nobody uses. So let's not create new stuff. Let's fix what we already have and make them cool. And so that's what he's been focusing on, is using old characters that, like Gold Balls. Who knew Gold Balls was going to be neat? He is now. They found this kind of niche for him that I'm like, this is cool.
Right on.
But this guy shoots gold balls. Like, why does anybody care? But now he did this cool thing with it, and I'm like, yeah, I love this. This is a great move. I don't care if I see the character all the time, but it's a great fit for him as a character.
So Hickman's taking these obscure B characters, C characters, and just going, all right, here's what you're good at.
He's finding some of the L and M and O characters. Yeah.
And what's going on when it comes to the other companies? So like we've talked about the big two, Marvel, DC.
Yep.
And under them is, in my perspective anyway, it's after that comes like Image, Dark Horse.
Image is definitely the next one. Image is great. I mean, they're publishing all the Mark Millar stuff that is now owned by Netflix. You know, everything he creates now is owned by Netflix.
Which is a little odd to me, but
well,
why not?
I think they knew that their Marvel deal was going to end sooner rather than later, so they replaced it.
So what are Image's right now biggest books?
I mean, The Walking Dead was their biggest book, and he ended it 2 months ago. Yeah, I think about 2 months ago now.
Yeah, maybe it was like an odd number.
Yeah, 193.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did it as a surprise. He didn't tell anybody the book was ending.
He just like, boop, by the way.
He solicited issues 194, 195, 196. I still get cancellations popping up when I do orders. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he didn't want anybody to know it was ending.
Oh, okay. So he just told the story he wanted to tell.
Yep. Yeah, he had finished cool. and he knew that it was over and that this was what he wanted to do. And people keep telling me, they're like, oh, he'll come back to it. He's going to miss these characters. Well, you have to remember, he's still writing most of these characters on the TV show and in the movies that they're getting ready to make for it and all that stuff. So I think he's done. He's writing other stuff now.
The comics.
Yeah, I think the comics.
Finish up the show.
He did his thing, and he was happy with where he ended it. And quite frankly, so was I. I thought I had stopped reading the book not too long before, maybe 8 or 9 months before. I thought it had gotten very cyclical. I'm like, yeah, I can tell you exactly what's going to happen, and it was right. But I was happy to see him end it. That's where he surprised me, was ending. I was like, this is fantastic. But
well, because he could have probably just kept it sort of milling through.
He does a big write-up in the back where he says, I could have, he's like, I tried. He's like, originally he was going to end it around issue, I think he said it in the 80s. But then he was like, well, what if I do this? And he's like, and there were these cool things. And I was like, yeah. He's like, so if he had ended it when he originally thought it, there'd be no Negan, you know.
Oh, yeah, well then.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, no.
Whereas this time he said every time that he tried to come up with something new to continue it, he's like, I felt like I was milking it. He's like, that I was stretching it beyond its limits, and he's like, so I knew it was time to end it.
Okay, so at least he's gone through. He's like, I've done all my cool ideas for it. I'm done with it.
He was like,
Clock out.
I feel like that I've done everything.
That's super cool.
Yeah. And Spawn's been huge for them lately because it hit that 300 mark. Millar's stuff is always good.
And what are some examples of Millar's comics?
Well, I mean, he's the guy who created Kick-Ass and Hit Girl. They're not owned by Netflix, as far as I can tell.
And that has to do with him co-creating,
I believe so. I believe it's because that it's owned by John Romita Jr., the artist. I have a feeling that it wasn't part of the Netflix deal. It might also have nothing to do with the artist. It might have more to do with where the rights were for movies already.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember who made the Kick-Ass movies.
But they might retain
I
the
have a
rights to
feeling
it.
they probably have the rights, so he couldn't sell it. But everything else he's done, like Chrononauts, and he just did one called Prodigy about like the smartest man in the world, which was fantastic.
Is that done?
Prodigy, the first series is done, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's out in trade and everything. He's doing another one right now called Space Bandits, I believe it's called. And it's kind of neat because it's these bandits in space or criminals in space but the 80s, they're like, he jokes that it took until like 1992 for the 80s to get to the Midwest of the United States. How long do you think it took to get to space? So the first issue opens with this one crew of pirates, effectively, attacking this cruise liner in space called the Lionel Richie. And it's got like a giant Lionel Richie head on the front of it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, it's so much fun. That one's really fun.